I am your African history teacher, Professor Hicks, and welcome back for another session. And as promised, I wanted to have a discussion today about our Latino family. And I do consider them family. I have a lot of reason to. First of all, I'm married to a wonderful Latina. And I mentioned before that I grew up in a mostly Latino neighborhood, though there were many African Americans there, but in my particular building, and I grew up in the project, there were mostly Latino folks. Most of my friends as I grew from an adolescent to adult were also Latinos. And because I lived in the Bronx and worked in the Bronx, and most of my time was spent in the Bronx, I became very familiar and very dear friends with many Latinos. And that brings me to my topic. When because I'm a historian and had to teach politics for a lot and have always enjoyed politics, when I heard about the election, about those African Americans and particularly Latino people who voted for Trump, I was a little disheartened. Moreover, as these new groups of Latinos have moved in the country, I was more familiar with the Puerto Rican family of Latinos. And as the new group moved in, I became more familiar with the Dominican population here in New York City, and as well as the Mexican population. I've also, in my work relationship, had many dear friends who worked with me as teachers who were Latino. And we've always shared a pretty decent and good relationship. One of them was my dear, dear friend for many years while I worked in. I still consider him a friend now that because we are both retired, we don't see each other that much anymore. But during that time, I've had some instances, and me and him has had some great discussions. As a guy, we have great discussions on race relations and racial issues as relates to Black and Latinos in New York City particularly. And at that time, more Puerto Rican than any other group of Latinos. With that said, I have, in the later years, have had some consternation and some conflicting relationship with many of my Latino family. And I don't mean my nuclear family, but I mean those in my community and those who I have always shared a pretty decent relationship with. But I've also have been the brunt of some racial and prejudice actions, I guess, or attitudes that were directed at me from Latino people, individuals, used the N word against me and made remarks about me. Now I do understand a lot of Spanish. I can't speak it, but because my family has been very much entrenched, or should I say, has many relationships with Latino people, I can understand pretty much, and because of my education, I was able to read a lot of the stuff. I used to practice reading the audio. So when this Trump stuff started, and I began to see and feel this separation between myself and the Latin community. And basically, as I mentioned, because of some insults I have received from that community, and I must admit that I've never, ever referred to any of my Latino friends in a derogatory way. So I feel like I can speak on this because I never returned the favor when I was given at the brunt of those racist remarks by those Latinos. And that brings me again to the Trump situation. When I did my own research, and I do a lot of research, I don't listen to news. I don't listen to news reports. Probably one or two news reports that are like Democracy Now! Is some reports, and years ago I was a very avid listener to WBAI. And I've never, and because of that, I've always researched instead of listening to the news lines and media because I have no faith in what we call white media. I have no faith because they are another arm of white supremacy, and I know that very well. But when I heard about the results and looking on social media and see some of the things coming out of my Latino brothers and sisters' mouths, I cannot tell you how hurt and dismayed I was. And I can't speak for anyone else who might, I'm sure there are some Africans and African Americans who have done the same, but I can't say anyone from my community I remember that happening with, nor anyone in my family. So with that said, I thought I would take a moment and digress on this subject because I went to ChatGPT, which I only use. Let me just give you guys some warning about Chat and Perplexity. Like any other instrument designed by white folks, it bends and leans to the white community. I won't go as far as to say the white supremacy community, but I'm sure their hands are in that because some of the questions and some of the things and issues I put to these AI models reveal the same thing that historically I have been, the receiver of, and that bias. So AI is just as biased. But the one thing I can give you I can give it some credibility on is that it gives you some quick information that 20 years ago I had to dig and get. So there are some facts, there are some theories that are legit that come up, but you have to cross-reference and be very careful. So on this particular measure, on this particular issue, I went to ChatGPT because most of the research I've done already. I'm not bragging, but I have. And I know that in essence, the Latino community and the Black community are one and the same. Race is only singularly attributed to one group of people, and that is people from Africa. And not by any superiority or inferiority. It just so happens that the Creator and its wisdom, I don't know if it's he or she, I don't really believe in it being personalized as a person. I truly believe that the Creator is the universe. I don't succumb to any religion, whether it be Muslim, Hebrew, or Christianity. I do not adhere to any of those religions. I understand where they began and how they started and what they're for. So I have been, long time ago, shed my religiosity adherence. All right. So with that said, again, I had been disturbed by some of the recent things that I've been hearing from the Latino community, and I wanted to speak to them. I think it's important. It's important for us to finally find out different. Now, one of the things historically I found out that throughout history there has been some conflict with our communities. It goes all the way back to many years ago, thousands of years ago. But I also found unity amongst that community as well. You could take that from what we like it. So I went to ChatGPT. As I said, you have to be careful with these. But in this particular instance, it gave up some crucial information because I fact-checked and cross-checked everything. So I started out with a simple question. And that question was, again, you can go and do your own research with this. Are most American Latinos designated white on their birth certificate? Why did I put that question in? Because before I began to curry to any type of opinion about anybody, I like to find out an opposing or at least an objective view. So hopefully ChatGPT has that view. And to some degree they did, because some of the answers are real. So I said, are most American Latinos designated white on their birth certificate? And their response was, yes, most American Latino Hispanics have historically been designated as white on U.S. birth certificate and other official documents. Now, I take some exception with the Hispanic term. I'd rather take Latino because truly, for those who are Hispanic listening to, or Latino listening to this, you are not a Hispanic. Not by definition, not by any other terms. Most of people who consider themselves Latino are from the Caribbean islands, like I'm from, descendant-wise from Africa, from the Caribbean islands, and were, I don't even want to say not discovered by Columbus, but were been there for thousands of years, and just so happened to be invaded, conquered, like Africans were, by Europeans and European racists. Yes, your conqueror, like my conquerors, are the same. We come from, in that regard, the same ilk. We have been given new names. We've been given new languages. We've been given a new culture. Though your culture is still entrenched with Caribbean culture, because if you go to Jamaica or Haiti, and then you go to Puerto Rico, you can see the similar foods eaten. You can see the similar, even languages. You can see the similarity in clothes and dress. You can see the similarity in worship of what rituals, whether it be Vodun or whether it be Santeria, they're the same. So we share a lot of cultural values. So Hispanics, I have a problem with, but Latinos is what we're going to use. So it's a yes, most American Latinos have historically designated as white on the U.S. birth certificates and other official documents. And it says here's how and why. Here's why and how that happened. Birth certificates are federal standards. U.S. birth certificates follow federal offices of management and budget. Race category. So the office of OMB, they call it management and budget, requires and puts out a document that gives you a race as category. Now we can already say there's no such thing as race, and we know the American white supremacists and our government that takes part in these actions are using these categories to divide us. Because as I said before, there are no races. There's one race. So why is this government utilizing these types of documents to classify or categorize people? There's only one answer to that: for separation. And once you are separated, you are able to be controlled. So these forms separate, this is ChatGPT, not Professor Hicks. These forms separate race and ethnicity. What is ethnicity? How do you separate a race from ethnicity? Ethnicity, this is their definition, equals Hispanic or Latino / non-Hispanic or Latino. Remember, ethnicity, Hispanic or Latino / not Hispanic or Latino. A little confusing. Race, it says, semicolon. What? White. Obviously, these are the races that this category is clumping together: white, black, Asian, American Indian, etc. But we already know there's no race, so already ChatGPT is taking a left turn. They're classifying based on this definition that white, black, Asian, American Indian, and their term, etc., are all races. Now, as I'm reading this and doing this at the time, I'm getting a little antsy. Then it goes on to say, because Latino is officially an ethnicity, not a race, parents must still pick a racial category. So for all those brothers and sisters who are African and African descent, here we must give this community a little break here. Because when they are being born here, come here, or whatever, they're being kind of forced officially to take a pick. So I guarantee there are many Latinos out there who look darker than me, but might have white on their birth certificates, or being coerced or forced to select such and same. Many, go on, say ChatGPT, many choose white often because, now it's going to give the reason why many Latinos choose white, because it's a default or first option listed. So in the hospital, mom has a baby comes out, she gets a card to sign. The sign doesn't say African, it says African American. She's not going to select African American. She's going to select white, because maybe that's what the baby looks like, and this is what historically they have been conditioned to do. Okay. Some identify that way culturally or socially. Now here's where the choice, independent choice of each Latino comes in, because in some respects the government is saying they have a choice culturally or socially. So that means if I speak Spanish, and let's say the doctor who delivered me was Spanish, and I'm in a room that's mostly, hey, I'm going to, no. Socially could mean or have some other antecedents, could be something we call acculturation. Acculturation means a people that want to acculturate into the major society. So a minor group of people wanting to become a part of the major group of people, acculturate and take on those values, those customs that might deem them as white or of the major group. The form may not reflect the racial diversity of Latin America. Here we go back again. Here we go again, using race as a separation. Even in the Latino community now, they got to pick which one they are in order to acculturate or to become socially accepted or even politically accepted, okay? So the form may not reflect. So I might not be there, might not be in there where for me to go, I'm African Latino. That might not be there. So we think this community deserves a pass there. It might not be a part of the form. And there is a lot of racial diversity amongst Latinos. There are black Latinos, there are white Latinos, there are brown, and my wife is a beautiful caramel brown Latina. Where does she pick? And already I'm sensing something that I don't want to say, is that my wife and people like her, not only are being forced, but are also being neglected of a race. Yes. My question there is, where are they in the racial paradigm? Where are they in the racial rainbow? Where do they stand? Because based on what I'm reading so far, Latinos are not a race. They're an ethnicity. And to me, it's almost saying they're not even people. Statistical reality. According to the U.S. Census and CDC data, roughly 60 to 70% of U.S. Latinos identify or are recorded as white, alone or in combination of official records like birth certificates. Here we go again. This community is being coerced, almost forcibly made to be. But let's not forget, they come from where they live, these places, Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, with racial attitudes that have been formed by them and their governments or their societies. So I had a student darker than my shirt tell me that he was white in one of my classes. I had to give him an education, but that education didn't go very far because, of course, this is being reinforced at home. So I didn't bring him that attitude, nor did he develop it probably developed a lot when he got here, because that's all we do here in America, is we try to create buffer zones between black people and whoever else. One time it was the poor white community that they used as a buffer zone back in slavery. You know, the first paddy wagon was developed from those people who were poor like us, given the privilege of a term called white, so that then they can control us and be that buffer zone, because the white folks in that period of time didn't have to worry about those white folks rebelling. Because long as they were giving some sort of advantage or some sort of entitlement, they were able to now look down upon their neighbor who was just their neighbor 100 years ago, African Americans, those free and enslaved. Now they were able to look at them as being under them, a subclass of them. That's where the paddy wagon, if you ever heard of that term, comes from. These Europeans, these white folks who were unprivileged and who were poor like me, were given a gun, a badge, and a wagon to go pick up runaway slaves. And that wagon was called the paddy wagon. Quick history. Let's go on. So we already went through it that whites alone, a combination of records, about 30 to 40% identify as some other race or multiracial. Folks, think. Look what they're doing to us. Multiracial? We've already said, and ChatGPT will tell you there's no such thing as race. They will tell you. I hope we get to that. All right. Often writing in terms like Mexican, Puerto Rican, Mestizo, or Latino. Historical context. Since the early 20th century, the U.S. government has legally classified Mexican and other Latin Americans as white for census and naturalization purposes. Yeah, that sounds really neutral, census and naturalization. No, that is a political class being created so that when the time comes, they can tap on that class and use it politically for their own good. Meaning, if I call you white and you're trying to acculturate to that, when voting times come, you will vote against me as a black person. The policy dates back to court rulings, e.g., and it's very, very ambiguous, e.g. in regarding Rodriguez in 1897. I didn't look up the case. I didn't think I need to. That allowed Mexicans to be counted as white, though socially they often face segregation and discrimination. Let me stop right here. This is why my Latino brothers and sisters, we have to find a way. to get rid of this social amnesia that both your group and my group suffer from. You are being used. You are being used. It says right there that they use this case so that they can be, and though they became white based on this case, they were still segregated and discriminated against, just like after voting for Trump, thousands of them being picked up and treated like crap. Something that we have experienced for 250 years in this country. And yes, you have to probably in your own country, but not like this. Would you then ask me, would you like me to show how that racial designation pattern has changed over the decades? For example, comparing 1970. No, I didn't want ChatGPT to tell me how that has changed because that's irrelevant to this conversation. So I gave it another question. I said, when was the term ethnicity created? Why did I ask that question? Because I want to know where does ethnicity come from? Who created this? It's less like black. Who created the term mongoloid to describe Asians with the epicantral fold? Where? This is all trenched or drenched or entrenched in white supremacist attitudes. So let's see where ethnicity comes from. Here's a clear timeline and explanation for ethnicity. It comes from ancient Greek and Roman origin. Ancient roots are Greek in origin. The word comes from the ancient Greek ethnos, meaning people, nation, or tribe. In classical Greece, ethnos described groups who shared customs, language, and culture. Well, what about Africans? I share the same culture as most Africans do, whether they're coming from above or here. We have the same customs. And in America, though we don't all come from the same community, we share the same language. Now, the only difference in us and Africans speak African, we speak American. But none of this is not based on biological traits. For example, Greeks might refer to Scythians, the Scythian ethnos, or the Egyptian ethnos. Gibberish, folks. Don't succumb to this gibberish. The English word ethnic entered in the 14th century, derived from Latin ethnicus, meaning heathen. This is what they're calling you, a pagan, or referring to people outside Christianity, what you really were originally. Mexicans, I don't care where you come from, Puerto Rico, Dominican, were not always Christian. You adopted that, or you were forced on you by the gun and the sword. You were forced to become Christian. This is not something your ancestors would have loved for you to be adopted to or acculturated to, because Christianity is not your religion. Your religion, called Christianity, actually comes from your original spiritual essence or your spiritual concept. Okay? All right, remember what it said, that in the 14th century, it was derived from Latin. Now, you've all been, Latin has been imposed on your group of people. Like the language for us, English, has been imposed on my people. It didn't mean cultural identity, yet it meant non-Christian people. They despised you and your religion. They knew that once they were able to obliterate your religion, I won't even call it religion, your spirituality, concepts, they knew they had you, like they did with us. We have too much in common for this crap. Modern meaning emerges in the 19th, 20th century. This is where it gets really good. Because in the 19th and 20th century, this is when this country started really pushing out, because they saw a group of people that they could use as buffers and a group of people that they could use politically. The modern sense of ethnic and ethnicity as a neutral term for shared cultural heritage and language or ancestry began to take shape in the 20th century. The noun, it's a noun, person, place, or thing. Person, place, or thing. Ethnicity itself first appears in the English records in 1941 to 53. Now, it didn't say the Dominican records. It didn't say the Puerto Rican records. It said the U.S., the English records, our records, in 1941 to 53. It was used by, listen to this, here's a kicker. It was used by sociologists, anthropologists to distinguish, meaning to differ, to determine the difference in cultural identity from biological races. Again, races or race. The 20th century institutional use. Here, after World War II, scholars rejected race. Here, ChatGPT telling on itself. Here it's using race to base this definition and description of, but now it's going to tell you there's no such thing as race. After World War II, scholars rejected race as a biological concept. Yes, they had to. They didn't just reject it because they felt good about themselves. They rejected it because the African scholars dug deep and showed them, embarrassed them, made them shameful, and along with a lot of dedicated white and Latino scholars. After World War II, scholars rejected race as a biological concept and began using ethnicity, here we go back, to describe human diversity in social and cultural terms. Buffer, control, segregation. By the 60s and 70s, U.S. government agencies and the Census Bureau, here's where it gets political, adopted ethnicity, e.g. Hispanic or Latino ethnicity, officially separating it from race. There is no race, but one race. And we all are separated by cultures, not skin color. Skin color is something that they have recognized as a category, not us. Buffon, Blumenbach, and all the racists created these terms and these categories. Your folks did not do this. Not to say again that we always loved each other. We've had conflicts, but we were smarter back then to know that this was a game, and the game is still being played. By the 1970s, U.S. government agencies and the Census Bureau adopted ethnicity, e.g. Hispanic or Latino ethnicity, officially separating it from race. Summary. Then it goes on, would you like to show how the U.S. sociologists use it? I don't need to know how the sociologists, I know they use it today. You go into a sociologist, you go into an office, you're looking to get some sort of form of public assistance, and because you need it, not because you want it, because you need it. And the sociologist may say to you, hey, you got to check this off right here because you're Hispanic. And if you want to be included in this, get a part of this U.S. love and glory, you got to check this. All right, so they redefined ethnicity as a part of the civil rights and anti-racist scholarship. No. Martin Luther King never, ever, in none of his, I read everything and heard all his speeches, never mentioned ethnicity or race or mentioned it. He knew it was bubblegum shit. Never would he have done something like that. Then I put, here's where I ended this. I said, well then, ChatGPT, I'm asking, you mean Latinos have no race? That's a profound observation, it says. And in many ways, you're right. When we say Latinos have no race, we're pointing to a deep truth about the nature of Latin American identity. See what they do? They throw you out of the pool of race. Not that there is such a thing, but technically we have to use these terms maybe to identification. But look, they've thrown you as Latino people out of race. They've already said your ethnicity. What the hell do these people think you are? And who are you? Latino is an ethnicity, not a race. Oh, really? In U.S. law and census categories, Latino, Hispanics, and ethnicity is not a race. This means a person can be white Latino, example given Spanish, Argentina, European, black Latino, meaning Afro-Cuban, like my wife, Afro-Dominican, maybe like your wife, indigenous Latino, Quechua, Nahua, or Mayan, Asian Latino. Look, they even got the Asians in there. You think the Japanese will be, and Chinese people will be proud to listen that they've been mixed, put in a category of ethnicity? You mean, let's ask a Japanese or Chinese person, what do you consider yourself? You know what they're going to say? Oh, I consider myself Japanese. But not in our world. Not in the Western world. Not in this white supremacist world. They got the cojones to include Asians, Latino, Japanese, Peruvian. So, Latino crosses racial lines. Oh yeah? What racial lines? It's a cultural, linguistic identity based on Latin America's shared history, especially Spanish and Portuguese shared. They shared their history. They imposed their history on you. They imposed their culture with the sword, the gun, and gunpowder. Not a biological race one. Latin America is racial reality. Latin America was shaped by intermixing among indigenous people, the first inhabitants. Okay, we know that Africans brought through the Atlantic slave trade, Europeans, mainly Iberian, colonized, and later Asian and Middle Eastern migrants. Please give me a moment, folks. One of the disturbing devices in my house. Over the century, these groups formed blended populations with fluid social categories like mestizos, mulattos, ambo. Because of that, most Latin Americans and their descendants in the U.S. don't fit neatly into the black, white, oh no, racial binary. Binary? Two? That's it? Everybody else is, what are you? There's only black and white race, huh? We're, that's great. In the U.S., the system forces, okay, now we're getting to the bottom of it. In the U.S., the system forces a race choice. When Latinos fill out social official form, they are required to select a race, even though many don't identify with any. That's why millions choose some other race on the census. In 2020, over 20 million Latinos checked some other race more than any group. Great. So black folks, let's give the Latino community just a little break, okay? Required means that you don't sign it, you don't come in here. You don't sign it, you ain't getting here. Get out. Now, this is after our government has gone to their countries and destabilized them, socially, economically, and politically, destabilized their countries. So what do? They come to America, the land of the home, the land of the free, the home of the brave, for opportunities. They got the Statue of Liberty in the harbor. Bring your tired, bring your weary. But when they get here, it's all a farce. They are required, folks. Yes, I'm not saying give them a slide, but we have to be understanding of this. All right, let's read that again. In 2020, more over a million last check other race more than any other group. This shows race doesn't fully describe. Let me say that again. Race doesn't fully describe Latino identity. So when we say Latinos have no race, it means Latino identity is transracial. Here they go, just like transgender. I am not homophobic. I do not support transgender anything. I'll tell you why. Because I spent 20 years in the school system watching kids, 15 years old, having to choose whether they are gay or not. Kids 15 years old calling themselves he, she, or shems. Kids 15 years old where their prefrontal lobe has not developed enough to make a decision like that because of poor parenting and the parents being poor. Kids having to make a decision whether they want to be a girl or a boy. When in their cultures, and I notice because I'm a historian, there is no mix-up of a man and a woman and who they are. Just like in Africa. Never had such things as he's or she's. A man was a man and a woman was a woman. These biological changes that someone can make at their own whim was never a part of your culture, Latinos or Africans. Look at your history. We never endeavored in those decisions or in those types of even attitudes. We were too busy working and being a part of our roles. We all had roles in society. Mom did this, dad did this, warriors did this, planters did this, engineers did that. There was no thoughts of, am I gay or not? Am I or he or she? As I watched my wife as a principal having to spend $60,000, which should have been going towards books and going towards education, going towards putting and creating a bathroom. A bathroom so the transgender community, or whoever you want to call them, can feel comfortable while going to the bathroom. Guess what? Let me tell you what took place in those bathrooms. Some of the most wicked crimes and sexual deviant behavior took place in those bathrooms because kids walked in there and they did what they want. Yeah, that to me is perpetuating and promoting transgender. I don't believe in it. I don't knock it. I've supported the homosexual community. I've voted for things that they've done and support them because I don't believe any community should be discriminated against no matter what choice they make. But do I believe in it? Hell no. No. That's a choice you make. I can't make a choice about being black. Latinos can't make a choice about being Hispanic or Latino, what you want to call them. It's the way they're born. The only folks that can do that are Europeans. Because that's their history, not yours and not mine. Stop it. I'm going to complete this and I'm almost done. 35 minutes of this is too long. It's a shared cultural and historical experience, not a skin color. It reflects worldview aligned with cultural fusion and racial separation. That's a lie. It does inform racial separation. Just like that kid told me in my classroom that black as he was, that he was white. 14-year-old kid. I'm not knocking. I know I'm going to get a lot of different responses to this, but I don't give a shit. This is not good for us as a people, black or Latino. Yes, you have a right to designate yourself as you will, and I respect that. I will never call a Latino out of what they are. I will never call a gay or homosexual or transgender person out. If that's their belief, more power to you. But that doesn't mean that those beliefs have to be imposed upon us, and particularly kids who are not ready to make that decision. If you're an adult and you made that decision, that's fine. You want to be Latino, that's fine. You want to be African American, that's fine. But let a person, a human being, have the dignity to be a full adult and a responsible human being to make those decisions. And yes, all of those people that I mentioned should be protected. Their rights should be protected. I would be the first one, as I did with my students, no matter what gender they decided to be, I protected them. And if any of them were here, they would tell you, yes, they all love me. I had very, very few detractors. And I had plenty of transgender kids in my class, biracial kids in my class, white kids in my class, black kids in my class. And I loved them all. And I still love them today. Who are you? And what do you want to be? And don't let this government decide who you are. If that's who you love to be that. Be committed to it. But just think about some of the things I read today. And where are we? Where are we? And with that, I'm going to say Ashe, and we'll be turning back to our other topic very soon. But this I had to speak to. And to my Latino community, I love you. I love you and always have. And for those who know me from Latino, they know that I do. Those who don't,